Dimitrov wins the biggest title of his career. He is the NATO ATP Finals champion for 2017.
That's right. Grigor Dimitrov captures the biggest title of his career by winning the NATO ATP Finals. Was this just a good week for Grigor? Or will 2018 be his long-awaited breakthrough season? David Goffin might have been runner-up in London, but he gets a chance at redemption in France this week when he represents Belgium in the Davis Cup finale. We'll talk marriage as Serena and Alexis wed in star-studded fashion, and divorce with many top players splitting with their coaches, including Andy Murray, Yvonne Lendl parting ways for a second time, and of course, Andrea Leanne will answer your Facebook questions and more as Prime Sports Tennis on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. All right, it's Thursday, the 21st of November, 2017, and thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with lead tennis analyst and former top 15 player in the world, Andrea Leanne. So, Andrea, Grigor gets it done, yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think this could be the start of something special for Grigor?
I'm a Dimitrov believer. I'm a true believer. I'm a Jack Sock believer. I'm a big believer in this whole new group of guys that are now in the top 10 and dominating. They did so in the beginning of the year, Greg. We saw Dimitrov, Sock, the two most prevalent players on tour when the season started, and now they're ending in a big splash. Of course, as you mentioned, Dimitrov, no longer the bridesmaid. We've talked about this, had that mentality, always got to the end, but couldn't push through. This time he did it. It took a few match points, though. He had me a little bit nervous in the end when he had triple match point on Goffin's serve and let that go 5 points in a row. But he held tough, he held his nerve, and he was able to prevail in 3 sets against Goffin in the finals, moved to number 3 in the world, career high for Dimitrov. But I think, to me, again, it was the nerve we saw in him. We always knew he had the ability. They call him the baby Fed because his strokes, his ability, his entire game style really reminds us of Roger Federer, very, very similar in that type of facade. But it was the mental that really came through for him in London, and it was the real determination, the grittiness, the real tenacity to stay in there, even when things did not go well. He didn't get down. He kept pushing forward. And this is something, Greg, he really wanted. You could see it when he won the match, went down on the court, trembling, some tears, and, of course, the hugs for the entire support crew, which is quite a family there. But we just give him a lot of credit because this is a guy who we've seen mature before our eyes this year. And he's a step ahead of Sock. He's a step ahead of Sasha Zverev and Kyrgios. He has really pushed through that one last boundary. And that's why I think he is going to be really challenging for those Grand Slam titles, his next career goal next year.
Yeah, because, look, we thought that 2017 could have been his breakthrough season with the start that he got off to. And we know he's got the talent because you'd have to agree first of all, let me ask you this question. If Grigor Dimitrov actually were to fulfill his talent at the utmost, compare him to any of the other, say, players that are around his age range or even some of the next-gen players, does anybody have as much or more talent than he does at his best if he can fulfill his destiny, his potential?
Well, I think Kyrgios has more firepower. He's got the biggest weapons, the most power of all the players. So, of course, he can blast anyone off court, and no one can compete with that. But Dimitrov, I agree with you. He has the whole package. He has the ability. He has the racket skills. He has the speed. Boy, in that semifinal against Jack Sock, did you see the gets he had to get, those sprints to the net to get those drop shots and make those points to come up with that break in the end in the third set against Sock? I mean, this guy can really move. And, of course, he has the technique is absolute perfection. I think the difference in Goffin and Dimitrov and the reason they reached the finals is their technique was so on form. There are no glitches. There are no hitches. We see with Jack Sock, I call it the 6 shades of wrist. If you actually do a slow motion of that forehand, you actually see the wrist from start to finish, the shades of the wrist turning, and that creates that hitch. And when it gets tense or it gets tight or the ball doesn't bounce truly, he has trouble with that. He has trouble getting the rhythm and the racket preparation in time to hit those big winners. But not with Dimitrov and not with Goffin. They have perfectly technical strokes, very simple, very at ease. And those are the types of strokes that hold up under pressure, as we saw in London. But yeah, absolutely, there's no question in my mind, as everyone has said, that Grigor has the ability. It's always been about the work ethic with him. It's about also the mental, the fortitude, about really wanting to be the winner, having that grit to be the Grand Slam champion, because it takes a little bit extra. It's one thing to be in the top 10. It's another thing to be number one or to be a Grand Slam champion. But I think he's starting to taste it, Greg. I think he's got the hunger, and that's what we really were waiting to see him develop this year, the maturity and that hunger, that drive to really want to go and seize the moment and grab it. And that's what we saw in London for the very first time, I think, in his career.
And even though they did not win the title, as we talked last week, Jack Sock, boy, he gave it his all. He lost to the champion of the event, and he went as far as he can go. He had a great week. He had a great few weeks, actually, maybe the best few weeks he's ever played. And sort of like Dimitrov, had a really good start to the season and a really nice end.
Yeah, well, Jack Sock, he's one of our favorites. We adore Jack Sock on this program. We speak, we're big supporters of him. We've been behind him even when he plateaued for about 6 months in the middle of this year. But yet, as you said, he came back. He won Bercy to qualify for London. What an incredible feat that was. And then, of course, in the round robin, showed sparks to get to that semifinal, to beat Sasha Zverev. That was a huge win. That was a big mental win for him. And I think when he got to the semis, though, again, the technique is to me a little bit of the issue. And it's in the forehand and it's in the serve. They're already huge shots. I mean, he has a big forehand. His whole game is based on his forehand. But I think that the technique needs to be worked out, needs to be simplified. Hopefully Jay Berger will address that. I think he can get more power into that serve if he could just get a little bit more motion into that beginning of the stroke. And, these are things that he can work on. And I think we're seeing about 65 to 70% of Jack Sock right now, which shows you how good he really can become. I mean, he's already number 7 in the world. That's a career high for Jack Sock. And it's a huge jump from two or 3 weeks ago when he was almost outside the top 20, fighting to stay in there. And now number 7 in the world is the top ranking American, of course, on the men's tour, and really the hope for U.S. tennis in the men's game. So I think that Jack Sock has a lot of potential. I think he is the most underdeveloped of all these guys. I think there's a lot to go on. He has the ability, the speed, the all-court game. He likes to play doubles. I think, though, Greg, the key for all these guys is scheduling next year. And when you look at really why they plateaued in the middle, I think they were playing too many events, traveling too much. Yes, probably picking up some lucrative paychecks and appearance fees. But I think they have to start thinking in a big picture in what is best for their tennis and finding a schedule that they can do where they can perform optimally at every single event. For Grigor, I absolutely believe working with Federer in the off weeks and working with Nadal again about a couple months ago was the key for him. I think he got to really see what it takes to be number one, the type of tough work you have to do. When Rafa Nadal keeps you on a practice court every single day for 3 hours, you know what it takes, and you find that hunger, and you realize what you have to do. And I think that is something Grigor should do more of, is playing with these top guys, if they'll play with him, though, Greg. Because we've also said, as we said with Andy Murray, these top 4, Novak, Andy, Roger, and Rafa, put themselves out there and practice with these guys. These guys are going to pick up on how to beat them. They're going to learn their tempo, learn their motions, and they're going to be able to, figure out tactics that are going to work better. So if Rafa and Roger still will practice with Dimitrov, I think that is the best thing for him and the best thing for Sock and Kyrgios. I think they need to be around champions like this where they get an intrinsic idea of what it takes.
And for Goffin, very, very big week for him. He came really close to the biggest win for him as well, the biggest title for him as well. And even though Nadal was not at his best, fact is you beat Nadal and Federer in the same event. That's huge.
Yeah, and actually, Goffin is number 7 in the world, and Jack Sock ends at number 8. And Goffin, what an incredible recovery he made after that stumble at the French Open, where he twisted his ankle and was out for about a month and a half. It was not a great injury. He was not able to play obviously on in the French Open, so it did cost him at Wimbledon as well. So it cost him some points, it cost him some opportunities, but to rebound as well as he did. To me, he's a very sophisticated guy. He's a very understated guy. He's not a big guy. He's very lithe, Greg. He's a very trim, thin guy. He's not an imposing force like some of these big brutes we see out on the men's tour. And he doesn't have a big serve. The funniest statistic to me against Grigor is that he actually had twice as many aces as Dimitrov. He had 10. Grigor had 5. So he is really able to place the ball well. He's able to generate a lot of pace because, again, the technique is so well done. He's able to pick up the racket head speed with the rhythm, and he really knows how to use all the shots. He can come over on that backhand as he did to get to the finals, but he also can hit the slice and mix up the pace, which really throws a lot of these big hitters off. So I think he's a smart player. To beat Rafa and Roger in the same event is a huge feat. The funniest thing is they said after he beat Rafa, he said, "This is the greatest win in my career." And of course, a few days later after he beat Roger, "This is the greatest win in my career." So a lot of firsts for Goffin. And I think he's handling it very well. To me, he's already very mature. He's already there mentally. And so now it's about building his body up physically, maybe a little bit more power, a little bit more strength, so he'll be able to endure the entire season.
Yeah, so in all, though, anytime you can get somebody, in my mind, anytime you can get somebody other than the big 3, the big 4, whatever you want to call them, I think it's great for tennis, and it really puts an end to a very good season where, yeah, Roger came back, but that's a good story. It wasn't like, Roger was expected to do this. So the fact that we did get some really good champions and some and to have Dimitrov end it all, it was nice. It was a nice way to end the season.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that Roger lost to Goffin and was not able to get to the final win, this storybook, the fairy tale ending is over now. He is a human being. He has his missteps, and I do think that he fell very flat against Goffin. He did not play the same perfect tennis that we're used to seeing from Roger, and he himself said that there was a little bit of a lull there, and of course Goffin sensed it and picked up his game and played well enough to beat Roger actually for the first time. And when you beat someone for the first time, it really takes the monkey off the back psychologically.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something, Greg, we're going to have to wait to see in 2018, is that these guys now are building confidence. Goffin, Dimitrov, Sock, Kyrgios, Team. Of course, he was in the draw. Sasha Zverev. They all have beaten these top guys now. They have the wins under their belts. And now it's about stringing them together so they can win big titles. And when you see Dimitrov and Goffin in the final, the first time you haven't had one in the major four since 2003, it's a big deal. And it shows the changing of the guard and the fact that, yes, Roger is still there. He still will be a very potent force. And, of course, as we say, St. Roger, everything he does is great. But, he is vulnerable. And I think that he is going to have to do some physical work in the off season. I think he's going to have to get stronger physically because I think when you add Novak and possibly Andy, Kay, Milos, all these other guys into the equation next year, you're going to have to play tough rounds in the beginning because these guys are not going to be seated as high. As we mentioned, Goffin now moves up to 7, Sock at 8. We talked about Dimitrov at 3. They're going to be the top seeds at the Grand Slam, at the Australian Open. And it's going to be these other guys who are ranked, 16 to 20 that are going to have to face tough matches in that third round, that first week. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But I think it's an exciting time for men's tennis. And we're not even mentioning Shapovalov, Denis Shapovalov. Sure. I mean, and guys like that. I mean, It's an incredible amount of depth.
All right. Now, on the women's side, the big story was not on the court. We talked about that last week. The big story was off the court, and everybody was talking about Serena wedding bells. And matter of fact, Serena got married when we did our show last week, so we haven't talked since then. So how did the wedding go?
She was actually getting married as we spoke, I think, on air. She married in New Orleans. She and Alexis, of course, the whole family, her mother, her sisters, the baby, Olympia was there, as well as a star-studded crowd, the Kardashians and Beyonce, and, of course, Carolyn Wozniacki and her fiancé, David Lee. It was a terrific, I mean, everything went to perfection. Mackie Shulstone, her personal training coach, officiated the wedding. They certainly did a great job with their own vows. Boy, Alexis's vows. I mean, how heartfelt that was and how touching. I mean, he really just did a phenomenal job, as did Serena. She looked absolutely gorgeous, Greg. 3 different dresses, Alexander McQueen, and then, of course, the Versace. And of course, they had the famous sneakers. She had the Nike studded sneakers for the dancing afterwards because there was lots of dancing going on. But it was a wedding to perfection, absolute perfection. There was not one detail left out. Anna Wintour was there to make sure Vogue got full rights to the whole entire event, which they did beautifully. And I'm sure she'll be on the cover of Vogue shortly. No, I think that this is a great chapter for Serena. I think I sense a calm in her now. The wedding is over. She's had her baby. She has her family. This is something 2 years ago she was desperate for. She wanted to turn the page. She wanted this type of development in her personal life. She did not want it all to focus on tennis. She wanted to have a family. And so I think that's a big check off the box, for her. And I think now she can go and refocus herself on tennis, knowing she has this support system and this in the back. So the tennis is not all important anymore. The baby, Olympia, is important. Her husband, Alexis, is important. And their life and their future is the most important. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of Serena. And yes, she won 2 Grand Slams. She was always a fierce champion. But the fact that she has so many more dimensions in her life now, I think can only make it better.
So it's safe to say that when she went on the honeymoon, there was no tennis racket.
That I'm not going to say. That I don't know. And I'm not really sure how much of a honeymoon it's going to be because she's got to play the Australian Open very shortly.
That's
and
true.
She's got a lot of training to do. So Mackie probably has a dual role there. But I think that the physical is the most important for Serena. I think that getting in the best possible shape is going to be key. I don't ever doubt Serena's competitiveness or ferocity on court. As you said, she is one of the most fierce competitors in sport, in all of sport. So that she will be able to not have to dig too much for when she returns to the Australian Open. But to me, it's about the physicality, making sure she stays away from injuries, that she's healthy, and that she is moving well.
Okay, now
no more tacos for Serena for a while now.
That's not good. That you gotta have tacos.
And by the way, Venus was there with her boyfriend too, and looking pretty good.
No pressure.
She was having a pretty good time. She was the loyal sister, always been the loyal sister, always taking care of Serena. Watched out for her. I think the prettiest picture I saw of the whole wedding was Oracene, Serena's mother, with baby Olympia. And they were watching the ceremony. Of course, the ceremony was done like a fashion runway, and there were couches and people watching go up and down the aisle, and it was very, very chic and very, very contemporary. But the prettiest picture, the one that spoke most to me, was Oracene with baby Olympia in her beautiful gown as well, and they all coordinated absolutely to perfection. So it was a great, great scene to see the generations of family there and understand the connection between all of them, and also with Alexis's family. Of course, they married on the anniversary of his mother's birthday. She, of course, passed away 9 years ago. So everything had a significance to it. There was a lot of sentimental value in every single detail.
All right. Well, this past week, since our last show, we had a couple of tennis greats pass away. Pancho Segura passed away at 96 at Parkinson's. Of course, he's an International Hall of Fame tennis player who coached Jimmy Connors. Jana Novotná also passed away, Czechoslovakian, former Wimbledon champion. Matter of fact, when she won, she was at age 29 and 9 months, and that was the oldest first-time winner of a women's singles title since the Grand Slam events accepted pros back in 1968. So, and she had really been through a lot of tough times, as you remember, trying to win the big one, and she finally broke through at age 29. Unfortunately, cancer got to Jana Novotná. This is what happens. But we wanted to definitely talk about both of these players, former great players and ambassadors for the sport. And of course, Novotná played during your time. I mean, a little bit after your time as well. So talk a little bit about what you remember about Novotná.
Well, I knew Jana. She's a little bit younger than I am. And, of course, my condolences go out to her family. She was just, Greg, she was such a terrific person. I mean, she came from the Czech Republic, and like, most Czech players, she was smart, and she was very stoic when she needed to be, as but she also had this great sense of humor. And she had a real spark to her off court, which most people I'm not sure really saw. And she just had a funny way of seeing things, in a realistic way of seeing things that always was so refreshing to me. I did get to, as far as, Yana as a player, I thought she was a late bloomer actually on tour. She came on tour. She was good friends with another Czech, Hanna Manlikova. They played some doubles together. Hanna, was on the way out. She was on the way up. I think that Hanna was very helpful to her in the first few years. And I think that, Yana developed that all-around game, but it took a little bit. It did not come in the beginning. She had to really pay her dues and learn her craft, whereas Manlikova was like a colt out there, Greg. She was so smooth and, so everything came so easy to her. She just glided around and she could hit these backhand topspin winners anywhere on court. Yana was more crafty. She had to chip away at the opponent and keep coming in and keep grinding them down. And it was that type of personality that I think persevered. I remember we had some issue with a practice court, and I ended up getting to hit with her.
Mm-hmm.
I was hitting with her. And what I remember most about Yana is that I didn't really remember her as having these big weapons, but I was so impressed with how consistently she was able to keep the depth on all her shots. I mean, right on that baseline, the depth in her shots, her placement, her precision, the way she moved the ball around court, opened up the court, made the opponent do the work, was really, really genius. And I think that's really what paid off for her in the end. As you mentioned, of course, there's the iconic moment of her at Wimbledon where she lost to Steffi Graf up 4-1 in the third. And that was in 93. And then when they went to give her runner-up trophy, of course, the tears on the Duchess's shoulder. And that, she said, actually was a blessing in disguise, because the next day it wasn't about Steffi, it was about Yana. And all the headlines were about Yana. And she was so happy about that, because she was not, a flash personality by any means. And she sometimes was a little bit overlooked with the, brighter players on tour, the younger ones like Hingis and Graf, Stellis, Capriati. But she also, I think, loved that attention and loved the credit. And thank goodness, Greg, she got that Wimbledon title in 98. She did lose to Hingis in the finals in 97, but she actually played some doubles with Hingis. But in 98, she was able to beat Taliyet. She beat Venus, though, to get there, and she beat Martina Hingis in the semis. So she got revenge, definitely learned from her losses, and that's where the intelligence came in, and she learned how to play, because it didn't all come easy to her in the beginning. This is someone who had to work for it. And to that degree, I think everyone has so much respect for Yana, and that she really had to learn the craft and do the hard work. And it paid off, though. As you said, she's a Hall of Famer. She was inducted in 2005, first time up for the ballot. And as you also said, she was such a nice person. Yes, she was intelligent. Yes, she was fierce on court. And yes, she had some nerves, Greg. I remember sitting at the French Open watching this match between her and Shanda Rubin. I mean, everyone talks about the Wimbledon thing with the Duchess of Kent, but this one at the French Open was just beyond. She was up 5-40 in the third set and somehow lost it.
Wow.
And so but most players would just say that's it. That would
sure.
I mean, to lose that at the French Open, that would be it. Just be too crushing. But show the resolve, the inner resolve that she had to come back and to be able to put that in perspective and to learn from it. And then, of course, to get her own Grand Slam title.
Yeah.
She also, by the way, was ranked number 2 in the world. So that was in 97 after that final at Wimbledon. She was ranked number 1 in the world in doubles. So she had a very comprehensive career. And, I think this is very sad. I mean, everyone, everyone's kind of lighting a candle for her at this stage, because she was so well respected and by the entire tennis community. And I knew she was ill. I knew she was battling cancer. I did not know, though, her death was this imminent. I did see her at Wimbledon a year ago. She was doing some commentating. She clearly looked thin, and you knew there were some issues, but she was very, the great thing about her is through all of this, and it was a battle. She battled the cancer right to the last minute. She had a sense of humor. She had found that smile, and she was able to put other people at ease, even though she was probably going through quite a lot. So I just, she was just one of those great souls that the tennis world had, and it's tough to see her go, but at least she had such a bright career and a bright life for the 49 years.
Yeah, and won 4 Grand Slam doubles titles with Helena Sukova and 4 Grand Slam mixed doubles with Jim Pugh. Also, Segura. See, I remember Segura because I'm not that old when he was playing, but I do remember, of course, Segura being a Jimmy Connors fan, being Connors' coach. So I remember that. And boy, 96 years old. That's a nice life. That's a nice long life for Pancho
Yeah, and
Segura.
he's a character. I was on court with him. I had a lesson with him in La Costa, and my grandfather brought me out there, and I got on the court with him. You know, he was only 5'6". You know, he came from Ecuador. He had rickets as a child, so he had these very bowed legs, and you know, of course, he had 2 hands on both sides, so he unorthodox style, but he was fierce. And I mean, everyone said you got out there, and he could just whip that forehand or backhand and put the ball anywhere he wanted it, and it was just lethal. He was also lethal in the lesson, though, Greg. I remember getting out there. I was not that. I must have been, 11 or 12, 13 years old. And I knew who he was. I knew he was a legend. I knew he coached Jimmy Connors. But, of course, the first thing he did, he had me hit a few balls, and then he brought me up to net with his shopping cart, and he just started firing balls at my face as hard as you can imagine. And he said, come on, this is no big deal. And I had a reflex of volleys, and my grandfather standing there laughing. There was nothing very funny about this because I literally was just fighting for survival, not to get hit in the face. And finally, after maybe 100 balls, it felt like forever. He finally stopped and he goes, well, what's the problem? I said, I'm just trying not to get hit. He goes, what's the big deal? You just have a little bruise. So to him, the battle was what it was about, and he loved it. He thrived on it, and he liked to see people who are on the court enjoying the same thing. So I definitely had to make sure I was up for the task. I didn't want to seem feeble at all, and it was a great experience, though, to be on the court with him and to watch him then, as you mentioned, with this incredible career, both as a player and a coach. I mean, the strategic mind of Pancho Segura was just unparalleled, and I think that that will go down as much about him as his tennis, and of course, as you mentioned, a Hall of Famer. So yes, it was a tough day to lose two bright minds and bright personalities in the sport.
All right, let's wrap up with what we always wrap up with here on the show, and that is Facebook questions. We've created a place for tennis fans to have a better experience in following the sport, both with our show and our social media platforms, including your Facebook page, where we ask the fans to provide questions for you to answer. And as always, you had a long list of questions to go through before choosing the 3 that we are going to ask you today. Let's start off, first of all, with Tobias from the Netherlands. And he wants to know what you think about the Next Gen group, including Dimitrov and Zverev. And, of course, you also have Sock and Goffin and Team. And so a little bit older than the Next Gen, but we understand exactly what he's talking about. These young top players that are going to try to come up and go up against Novak and Andy and all the top players. And he wants to know what you think about that matchup of those young up-and-comers against the Novaks and the Andys of the world.
Well, we talked a little bit about this. This they call them the Next Gen group. I think that's for the 21 and unders. This group with Dimitrov, Sock, Kyrgios, Team. To me, that group, I'm going to call them the next guard, and they're already there. They're already ranked in the top 10. They're already in positions now to win titles. And so I think it's now going to be the challenge for Andy and Novak, Milos, Kay, Thomas Berdych, who I think is coming back as well, and Stan Wawrinka, who is still, maintains some sort of ranking and better of all of the top guys through this break of his where he had 2 surgeries. But I think it's going to be on them now to see how they can do against this new guard of guys who are playing well, have more confidence, have developed maturity and the belief, and have the position now. It's going to be up to Andy and Novak to challenge them and get their spots back. And to me, that's going to just, everything feeds off each other, Greg. And whenever you have this type of depth and this type of intensity in the top 20, it feeds off and it makes the players push more and play better. And that's only good for the game. So I'm looking for Novak to make a run. I think Novak will come back strong. He's been in LA. He's been in Las Vegas with Andre Agassi. He's making the rounds. He's putting the team together. There is a rumor that Roddick Stepanka is going to coach him now. It's going to be the day-to-day coach. Andre will be I guess you call it the mentor coach. And Roddick, he just retired, so I think that was going to be a good one for Novak. He likes him. He's comfortable with him.
Okay.
That's the rumor, at least. Andy Murray, as you just mentioned, is split with Yvonne Lendl. And so he's going to just, go ahead and basically do his thing. I have a little bit more doubt with Andy Murray. I think he still has physical problems. I think that hip is still giving him trouble. I think he's going to try and curtail his season and probably his scheduling, really pick and choose his places where he's going to play, because I just don't think his body's going to hold up. And I think that's one reason why there was no need to have Lendl, because with Lendl, you got to be 2 feet in, and you got to go full blast every single minute.
Sure.
And I don't think Andy is physically able to do that. But I think that definitely Novak is going to challenge. I think Milos took a real hit psychologically this year. Yes, the aches and pains didn't help, but I think it's more mental with him. And Kay, of course, is apparently back in that Nike this week, trying to introduce a new tennis shoe. So he's definitely looking forward to a good year, because, of course, he's got with Chung Mir, a new Asian player on the rise. He's got something, nipping at his heels as well. So it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how these old guys do against the new ones. I know how the new ones are going to do. I know how Dimitrov and Stock and Kyrgios and team are going to play. We've seen them all year. Now the question of how is Novak going to play? How is Milos and Kay going to play? How are they going to respond from all this time off? And Stan as well. Are they going to be able to pick up where they left off, or are they going to be able to, really find a lull, and they're just not going to be able to regain that form? So I think there are a lot of interesting questions.
All right, and we'll talk more about that when we preview 2018 next month. So don't forget that. We've got our 2018 preview show, and we're going to go into all of that, including, of course, take a look at the big event to start the season in the Australian Open. Now, Angelica from Argentina wants to know, we just talked about Serena. What do you think about Serena's season, and whether or not you think she's going to have success, and that whether marriage is going to change her?
Well, we've been asked about that, as well as Maria and Vika. There are 3 veterans. We expected to see more of Vika. She's still in the custody battle. That seems to be still an issue. Maria is on her way to Turkey, apparently, to play an exhibition this month. So she is still working out, still training the discipline, Maria, we always know. Serena is going to be interesting. I think that how marriage changed her, how could it not change her? Whenever you have a major development in life and your personal life, it always impacts your professional. But I do think one thing about Serena is she is able to compartmentalize, and when she gets out on court, it's a different Serena. It's the tennis Serena, the Grand Slam champion, the hungry competitor comes out, the street fighter comes out. And so I'm not worried about how she will do on court. I just am primarily concerned about the physicality of it all and how her body holds up. Because when you take long periods of time off, Greg, and I remember when I went back to Princeton to finish my degree there, and I came back on tour, and someone said, well, do you feel it more mentally or physically? It's always physically you feel it more, because it's, when you train the body your whole life to withstand match after match after match, and then you take a long period of time off, it's hard to get that muscle memory back. And so that, to me, is really the issue for all these that have taken off 5, 6, 7 months, possibly a year. In the case of Serena, obviously a maternity leave. Is she able to regain physicality? Because there's no question that was a major factor in her game. When you're able to blow opponents off at will, that's what intimidates them. That's what really, really causes those big blows. And that's what she's going to need when she gets back to Australia. I don't expect her trying to, outrun anyone or finesse anyone. I expect her to overpower these girls again. And she's still young enough to do that.
All right. And speaking of Andy Murray and Yvonne Lendl, Stefan from Sweden wants to know why there are so many coaching changes. And we've talked a lot about these coaching changes, really, it seems like all season. But boy, a lot of them have taken place, including, of course, Murray and Lendl. So what do you think? Is this unusual, or is this just the time of year?
No, it's a time of year. This usually happens. Pliskova got it off early. She hired Thomas Strupa. We mentioned Caroline Wozniacki has split with Sasha Bejan. They announced that last week. I'm not surprised. I think Caroline at this point is really focused on getting married to David Lee. That's her focus for 2018. It will not surprise me in the least if she's pregnant by the end of next year. I think she has moved on. She has turned the page, and she's looking for her future now with her family. And of course, after the year she's had, why shouldn't she? She has done everything she has wanted to do. Yes, it'd be nice to have a Grand Slam title, but she's had a Hall of Fame career. So she enjoys the spotlight. She enjoys the attention. She likes to get out there and prance around, and as we all know, on and off court. But I think that for Caroline, she really doesn't need a coach at this stage. She's not going to make any major changes. Having Dad there for support is enough for her. We mentioned that Angie Kerber has hired Wim Fissette, who split with Concert a few weeks ago. So Wim Fissette back in the picture, as we predicted, with Kerber. And, of course, I think that's a good match for Kerber. I think that she will enjoy Wim Fissette's very intelligent way he goes about things. He's the type of guy that texts the strategy for the match the night before, and you want his player to really think about it overnight while they're sleeping and let it sink in. And then the next day he goes over it. So he has a very comprehensive way of how he does things, and he has a very low-key way of doing things. You don't hear too much out of his camp. He's very positive. He's very upbeat. He's very professional, and players appreciate that. So I think that that's a good move. We mentioned Andy Murray and Lendl splitting, and no one really coming in there to fill that void. But yeah, I think that we're going to hear more coaching changes. I don't think that this is the end.
All right, and we'll keep updating that, and of course we'll also remind everybody of the coaches and the players and all the teams when we preview 2018. Next month. Before I let you go, Andrea, Davis Cup, as I mentioned, at the Open, Goffin loses a tough one in London, but now he's got to regroup and get ready in a couple of days for Belgium and go up against France. And we knew France was going to be tough all season when we first started talking about the Davis Cup because of how deep they were. And that they could have 2 or 3 or 4 players that couldn't make it, but they'd have a couple more that were available. So no surprise that France is here. And if David Goffin can play as good as he played last week, maybe he could boost Belgium this week in France. What do you think?
Well, he should get the 2 points, shouldn't he, in the singles? I mean, he's ranked 7th in the world. He has the momentum. We hope he's not too tired. I mean, it's been a long season for him. He's had to make up for all the time he lost with the ankle injury. So obviously, we've seen that with Del Potro and Murray. The Davis Cup just took everything out of them at the end of the year. So we'll have to see how David Goffin is feeling. Of course, this is a away tie for him. It's being held in France.
You there, Andrea?
They have Sanga, they have Monfils, they have Gasquet, they have Puig. They have so much depth, and they have so many great players. Any combination of that could probably do it. But, again, we just don't know who at the end of the day is going to really show up. And Yannick Noah, of course, will be encouraging them because he wants to win the Davis Cup more than anyone. I think that, to me, I think it's a tough one because I don't know how tired Goffin is.
Yep.
And it is away. If it was a home tie for him, I would certainly place him as the favorite because they do very well at home. But I think it's going to be a tough road. I'm going to go I'm
going to go with Belgium. I'm going to say Goffin is going to.
Belgium?
Yes, I'm going to say that he's going to carry that momentum and that confidence, sort of like Kyrgios. He's going to carry that momentum and confidence into winning it and representing his country, even though it's not going to be in Belgium, like you said. But I think he'll come through.
All right, then I'll take France just to make it interesting because I think Sanga will come through. I think that he tends to peak. If he's not injured, he tends to peak in these types of Davis Cup matches, especially at home. I think Gasquet is playing pretty good tennis. They have the doubles. And so, I think that they certainly on paper should win because they have more depth than Belgium. But, it'll be interesting. I think it's going to, as usual, it will be a great, great Davis Cup tie, and it will come down probably to the very last match.
Probably. All right, Andrea, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the Davis Cup. And next time we talk, we'll wrap up the Davis Cup, and then we're closer to our 2017 Aces Award show as well. And then, as I mentioned several times, we'll preview 2018 real soon, too.
Great. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Andrea. So that's Andrea Land. I'm Greg DePalma. Don't forget, if you'd like to have Andrea answer your questions next week or on our next show, whenever that show is, next week or any week, go to her Facebook page. She'll pick out your questions, and we will talk about it on the air here on Prime Sports Network's Prime Sports Tennis Show with Andrea Leanne. So don't forget, you can check out all of our broadcasts on demand, either on our website at primesportsnetwork.com or on our iTunes and YouTube pages under Prime Sports Network. Thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leanne on the Prime Sports Radio Network.